Paul. I'm so happy to receive you. You are from PEN, Turkish PEN. I know. Well, I represent PEN section Geneva, French speaking. If you are an author, if you are a writer, if you are a translator, if you're a journalist, if you are an editor, we would welcome you. We have some inscription boards downstairs. We are ONG and we live only with our members, and we send our little money we have to London, who directly interfere with governments to defend writers in jail, especially defend languages, minority languages that disappear, and translator. We just got now in Quebec the new declaration of Quebec to defend the translators, and we have a committee too for peace and a committee for women writers. Hope to see you in Geneva, not Geneva, in Suisse Romande. Thank you.
So, yes. So good evening, everyone. Yes, I think it's working. Good evening, everyone. It's not working. Yeah,
speak closer.
a bit closer. Okay. Now it's working.
If you prefer to use that one,
it's fine.
It's fine.
So, Ece asked me to start this conversation by reading you an excerpt of her book, her latest book, À quoi, la révolution, si je ne peux danser. Donc, on va commencer cette conversation.
Je vous entends presque pas quand je parle en même temps, je suis désolée.
Voilà. Là, maintenant, ça va bien. Ok. Donc, je disais que j'allais commencer cette conversation en lisant un extrait du livre de Ece, À quoi bon la révolution si je ne peux danser. Tunisie. Nous fuyons. Je suis assise au milieu de la banquette arrière d'une voiture blanche qui file à 140 km/h vers le sud de la Tunisie. À ma gauche, une femme, brune, pétrifiée, avec une perruque blonde qui glisse sur le côté. À ma droite, cachant son crâne rasé avec un foulard blanc, une autre femme qui agite nerveusement la jambe. Notre conducteur est un vieil homme, borgne de l'œil gauche. Installée sur le siège avant, la vieille dame vêtue de soie mauve, aux cheveux blancs et à l'air détendu, baisse la vitre pour offrir son visage au vent. « Où allons-nous » demande la femme au crâne rasé. La vieille dame répond. « Dans le sud. » Agacée, la femme chauve insiste. « Dans le sud. Mais où ça ?»« Très loin. » Or moi, il y a quelques instants, j'étais en partance pour Istanbul. Voilà que maintenant j'entreprends le voyage à la fois le plus merveilleux et le plus terrible de ma vie. Je me souviens au début de l'histoire et j'ai encore du mal à y croire aujourd'hui. Ece, you asked me to read this excerpt. Why? And can you tell us more about your new book?
Okay. The mic issue has become the story of the night. Hello and welcome. It's going to be a lovely night because we're going to talk about the book, and then it's not going to be a lovely night because we're going to talk about Turkey and the freedom of expression issues, the fun stuff. Thank you for reading the passage. It was quite difficult. I cannot even tell the book's name in French. À quoi bon la révolution si je ne peux danser? No? It has been published in several languages, and it took me some time to memorize the name in German. Now I have to memorize it in French. It means, what good is a revolution if I cannot dance to it? Actually, it's a quote from Emma Goldman, American anarchist from the start of the 20th century. Normally, the original title of the book is, I think it's more interesting, but my European publishers, thought that the Europeans wouldn't understand the original title, so we changed this to this quoi, révolution, blah blah blah. The original title is Women Who Blow on Knots. It is like, knots, when you knot the rope. It's a verse from Quran. It's a part of a verse from Quran, the holy book of Muslims. In Quran, it says, "Be aware of those women who blow on knots," which actually refers to doing witchcraft. So it says, the Quran says, "Be aware of those women who do witchcraft." So basically, I wrote about witches of the Muslim world in a way. It's about 4 women, a Tunisian dancer, a journalist, blogger, historian from Cairo, and magnificent Madame Leila, who's a very old woman and who's kind of shady. And there's a Turkish journalist who has been fired from her job very recently, and you could guess who that is. It's a road journey. Sometimes I call it's a Thelma and Louise with a better ending, because they don't kill themselves. They are hitting the road to kill a man, actually. They are starting their journey from Tunisia. They go through Libya to the from the desert, and then they go to Egypt, Alexandria, and then they pass Mediterranean. They go to Beirut, and then to the border of Syria. All this journey is to kill a man, and then throughout the journey, of course, they are passing through Arab soil, which is at the time witnessing the Arab uprisings, Arab Spring. So in the background, there's a bit of politics, but actually it's a women journey of coming to be, growing up, or coming to terms with women, and so on and so forth. That's it. It is about Muslim witches who hits the road.
And how and why did you have the idea of writing this book? It's your second novel, you told me. So how did it come into being?
I always go to places to write novels, books and novels. My first novel, Sounds of Bananas. I lived in Beirut for a year, almost a year, to write that book. And then I lived in Tunisia to write this book for a year again. Well, at the time, I was, Turkey was coming into this crisis that you all know now, but by then, people were not really aware of what was going on in Turkey, whereas we were. This whole thing is happening in some sort of noisy by then, it wasn't that as visible as it is now. Not the whole international media was talking about the freedom of expression issues in Turkey or the jail journalists. But yet again, now as journalists, we were experiencing hardcore oppression, threats, and so on and so forth. So I went to Tunisia actually to get away from all this and not to get myself into trouble. But then, after I went to Tunisia to write this book, I got fired through a telephone call which lasted 30 seconds or so. And then I stayed in Tunisia to finish the book. Getting away from Turkey didn't really help because Tunisia was in turmoil itself as well. While I was writing the book, I was living in Carthage, a district of Tunis, the capital, and Carthage was surrounded by radical Islamists, torches in their hands, shouting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And all I could do was, drink a glass of wine and write this book. So in a way, actually, it is a book of my survival. So I guess the readers feel that as well, and they feel better when they finish the book. it helped me survive, so I think it will help the readers to survive as well.
And you chose the mean of a novel to express your ideas and to express what you felt was important. Why did you choose this mean? You wrote many books as a journalist, as a journalist book if you want, and here you chose a novel for the second time. Is this going to be something that your preferred means of expression, and why a novel?
This has a funny story behind, so I'll tell the story. I went to Beirut, and the idea, the plan, was actually to write a book about journalistic book, about Hezbollah. And I waited for about a week for this man to talk to me. Ibrahim Musawi, I always say his name throughout the world, just for everyone to know, this is the guy who made me write novels. He made me wait for a week, and then he didn't, answer my questions, and he was enjoying this, process of me, being tormented, and then he's not answering. He was smiling and so on and so forth. And at one point, it struck me that actually I know the answers, and I don't actually need him to tell me something. And then it was almost like an epiphany. I don't want to mysticize it, but it was almost like that. And then I went to Corniche, to the seaside of Beirut, and I started writing Sounds of Bananas. And then on, I realized that I was actually tired of bombardment of reality. Because I have been doing journalism since I was 19. I'm 42 now, and I have been dealing with the hardcore, horrible stuff since very early ages, like tortured kids, raped women, freedom of expression, whatever you call it, whatever comes to your mind, I was in it and facing it very closely throughout these years. So I think I was, one, tired, and second, and more importantly, I wanted to be above the cloud of reality to reach the truth in a way. So novels, fiction, I guess, for me is the right way to reach the truth, to get beyond the myths of reality. And maybe it's because I'm coming from this country where reality is very volatile, reality is manufactured, reality is not dependable, and reality is just a lie sometimes. So maybe this is the other reason. But I have always been a literature person. I was publishing literature books since I was 20. So novel is another case. Novel, requires a lot of maturity. A cold blood, a serial killer, cold blood, I think, and like a lot of patience. And I think I needed to grow old to write a novel. So I waited for a while, and then I'm writing novels, almost only novels.
So you say that for you, fiction is the right way to reach the truth. And in fact, as you say, you wanted to escape a little bit from the reality of the facts in writing this, but at the same time, when you describe those 4 women going through the reality of what was happening in 2012, the Arab Spring, in Tunisia, Libya, Syria, and Egypt, then you wanted also to talk about this reality.
Yep.
Now, coming from Turkey, what is your perception? What is your view on this type of public protest, and how is it lived in Turkey?
This is a fun book, and now we're going to the not so fun part. Well, actually, I wrote a book very recently. It has been published in Germany, and now it's going to be published in French as well from Galad Publishing House in October, and it's about Turkey, and it's called Insane and Melancholy. I don't know, how do you say that in French? Okay. It's the story of Turkey, which actually tells about the uprisings and the background story of those uprisings, if I may say so. while I was writing this book, Tunisia was happening, let's say. El Kasba was, the equivalent of Tahrir, was still lively, and elections were happening. Ghanouchi was taking over, radical Islamists were all over the place, so on and so forth. And Tahrir, before writing the book, or while writing the book, I was in Tahrir as well. No, before writing the book, I was in Tahrir, following as a journalist. And then I wouldn't say I never thought, but it wouldn't occur to me that a similar thing would happen in Turkey. And then in a year or so, in 2013, it was burning, Turkey was burning. It started on with these 3 trees in Taksim Square, and then it wasn't all about trees, it was about many things that have been accumulating for the last decade. I think, it is bizarre in a way, because the audience of the world, the global audience, is turning their eyes to the countries when they really go insane. And then they never had the time to hear the background story, how these people got insane. And then, because whenever you want to concentrate on some insanity, there's another one exploding somewhere else in the world. But I think there was a common reason for all these 3 uprisings, which was the dismissal of those people, groups of people, and all they wanted to do was to show the world and to their country that they do exist. Because they have been dismissed, especially in Turkey, all those people have been dismissed by the political power for such a long time, and they accumulated anger, for throughout almost 10 years. And then finally they were in the squares to tell everyone that they do actually exist in this country and they are political beings as well. And in Turkey, what happened was, for 10 years or so, all the ways to exist as a political being were locked down. The legislative power was monopolized by one political power. The executive power was completely monopolized by the same power. And the judicial system was extremely politicized, and it was a victim of, executive power and legislative power were both, victims of nepotism as well. So the only place for these people to exist were the streets. That's why they took over the streets, not only in Istanbul but in the entire country. And they told the world that they are here. This Turkish model, whatever, it was called Turkish model, and it is still called Turkish model. This Turkish model took over the world, and it amazed the world for some 10 years, I think. Everybody was very happy with the idea of perfect marriage between political Islam and democracy. So Recep Tayyip Erdogan, starting with Recep Tayyip Erdogan, all the leaders, all the spin doctors of the system were praised by intellectual circles internationally, by politicians, by academics, by journalists, and everyone. For some reason, the whole world lost its cool, and they lost the ability to think objectively, and they were too happy even with the idea of Turkish model. And all these people who were present in Taksim Square uprising, they couldn't make themselves heard by the international media, international intellectual circles, or politicians. So that was the only time that they were visible. So that is why actually the whole thing got insane, because insanity was the only visible thing. So Tahrir had similar reasons. Kasba had similar reasons, and maybe even Spain and Greece had similar reasons. I think overall we are going through a crisis of liberal democracy, and there's other crises in every other region, but I think people, the most common thing, not only in Arab soil, uprisings of Arab soil, but throughout Europe as well, it is the crisis of visibility. People want to be visible.
So you say that, well, it's a crisis of visibility and also a crisis of the liberal democracy, because indeed, well, in all those different countries there has been harsh repression of public protest, but there is also repression of public protest and restriction of public protest in Europe as well, when we see public protest or even some kind of expression, especially after the passing of counterterrorism law, like there is in many now of those countries, including in Tunisia and in Turkey. In an article that you wrote in The Guardian about the Ankara bombing, you talked about a very interesting concept, I thought, about blackmail democracy in Turkey. What did you really, can you explain a little bit what you talk about this blackmail democracy in Turkey?
That is a very specific thing, and it wasn't only my, point of view. It actually, I think, it represented many people's approach to this thing. But we had 2 elections very recently. And one of them was in 7th of June, and then right after that we had another one on the 1st of November. And in between 2 elections, there were bloody incidents, very bloody incidents. One of them being Ankara bombing, which left more than 100 people dead. I think it had over 100 casualties. So what I was telling is, by saying blackmail democracy, was that either you vote for AKP or the blood is poured. AKP, the governing party, has been talking about consistency, stabilization. They were saying that if we don't have one power, one ruling power, one ruling party, Turkey will not be stable. If we have coalition, Turkey cannot survive the instability. So that's why I said the blackmail democracy, because after Ankara incident, representatives from the government, they were very quick to make this statement of, you see, this is instability.
Going back now to your novel, so it's about 4 women.
Yeah.
How is it to be a woman in Turkey? Probably, depending also where you live, it's probably not the same to be a woman in Istanbul or in another part of the country. How is it to be a woman?
It is great. Well, like, good old class issue comes along. If you're in upper class, it's okay because you have your own environment and you are enjoying the luxury of being a woman. But then if you are coming from a lower class, that is something else. But then, even saying this is a problem itself. Lately, with this new government, but I'm not, by the way, pointing out to the government as the scapegoat and mother of all evils and whatsoever, because this is a historic thing to talk about, but it's a long story. But finally, for the last 10 years, I think, we have been adopting this new cultural, living culture, which I call parallel lives, which is actually very acquainted with Saudi Arabia or Arab Gulf countries. When you have your gated community, you can do whatever you like there. But then whenever you go out, that's a different story. And Turkey was not like this. And now it's becoming more and more like Dubai or Bahrain or other Gulf countries. that is very disturbing, very depressing, and it's quite backwards. This is one part of the story. The other part is even more bloody because, according to several reports, hatred killings, which means women killings, have increased 1,400% in the last 10 years. And it's becoming more brutal, the way they kill women, which is very, representative, I think. Being a woman is almost horrible in Turkey right now. But then there is this very strong, distinction in between people. You're either from the party or from the within the party line, or you're off the party line, and that makes a huge difference. I think that's enough. It's even depressing me to talk about these things seriously.
So I'm going to follow up talking about also more depressing things. Coming back to you as, well, of course, a woman, an author, but also a journalist. At the introduction of this talk, we talked about maybe the freedom of expression in Turkey. So maybe I can ask again the question, how is it to be a journalist now in Turkey?
Well, I don't know, I'm not one of them anymore. Most of the journalists, I was one of the first, ones, let's say, who were fired. And then on it just went like a chain accident. It's funny because when I was fired, not everybody thought that it's going to happen to them, but then of course it happened. This is a funny thing. Humanity never recognized fascism.
Sorry, Ece, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I didn't hear.
Okay, the important part is now, anyways.
Because you said something.
I don't remember. It's seriously not important. I'm just telling the important thing now.
You said it was a chain reaction, and at first the other journalists didn't react to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost. I didn't make it so open, but I implied that. Anyway, so I would say humanity is such a silly thing because they never recognize fascism when it's distant enough, and when they recognize it's too close. Anyways, they are victims already. Whatever. After I was fired, it was a chain reaction, and then everybody got into this jobless journalists crowd. We are a funny crowd now. Seriously, we are, because the other day, Can Dündar, imprisoned journalist, editor-in-chief of Cumhuriyet, and Erdem Gül, one of the other, another editor of Cumhuriyet, they are out of the prison after some months now, and we did this celebration, and almost 90% of the crowd of the people who came to party were jobless. So, when you reach a certain level of oppression, pain, whatever you call it, you start joking about it, which is sick, by the way, which is not normal. But then, what can you do? When I was in Beirut, I went to a cinema, and it was a Hollywood movie, a movie that's like a melodrama, like you cry, and the screening room was full of people, and I was the only one who was crying. The rest of the room was cracking; they were laughing like crazy, and I thought, okay, these people are sick, really sick. There is a child, dying on the screen, and they're laughing. And now we turn to that. Sometimes I really think that this is the sign of helplessness. We are doing too many jokes about, seriously painful subjects. But this is what you do. You have to bear with the situation, so you joke about it. So being a journalist is making a lot of jokes about very sorrowful situations. Most of them, you know, to be serious, most of them went onto social media. You know, that's why we have these enormous numbers of Twitter followers, or you know, Instagram or Facebook followers, because that's the only place you can still, you know, say something. And yeah, this is what they do. I mean, they try to speak, but then odds are not really in their favor.
Yeah, because when we read the human rights reports on Turkey, we see indeed that journalists are either fired or, worse, imprisoned, threatened, not only journalists but also human rights lawyers and so on. What is your view, your take about Turkey's actual policy on and crackdown on freedom of expression? It was never a particular champion of freedom of expression as a country, but why is it happening these latest years, in your view? How can we explain this? If it's too complicated.
It is not complicated. One, it is not really safe to talk about this. Second, it has a long story behind. And what else? It is a horrible situation, but then, you know, talking about horrible things don't make them change in a way. So we are rather, you know, focusing on what we can do, what we can tell, what is possible to do, whatever, you know, all those positive things, so to speak. But it's obvious that we are going through some sort of period where organized ignorance has taken over. It's not, you know, this is a funny part of the story. Okay, no offense, but European public, you know, acted as if all that opposition was either invisible or they were supporting the army against the AKP, against the democracy, whatever. And then after 10 years, after Gezi uprising, all of a sudden everything became visible. And now what all of them are talking about dictatorship of Erdogan, as if it is the only thing that we should get rid of. Huh? It's all, you know, there's this man who is mother of all evils, and then if you get rid of it, that's okay. It's not the story. I mean, what are you going to do with the millions of people who are religiously supporting the system, the government, whatever you call it, the political power? That is one thing. And the second thing is, this society has been over-politicized, you know, since from the very beginning. We have two types of toilets, for God's sake. It's alla franca and alla turca. And that, by the way, using either of them represents your political view as well. This is how horrible it is. And then you end up with organized ignorance, which capitalized on every kind of divide in the society. So it is not, you know, dictatorship of Erdogan, he is such and such. There was an article today, actually it was an editorial in Guardian. So the dictatorship of Erdogan, it was something like, the country is the victim of one man's something and thin skin. As if bad temper, and as if the, you know, whole country's only problem is one man's bad temper. Well, there is such a problem, but that is not the only problem. Yeah, and there is a regional issue as well. And I find it, you know, I started finding it rather unfair to talk about, you know, Erdogan, whereas all those European leaders begged him to be a wall against the wave of Syrian refugees, and they were never speaking about either freedom of expression nor the dictatorship. So, you know, this is not fair, I think, just to take one case and talk about it. It's a regional matter. Actually, it's a matter of humanity nowadays. I mean, humanity has been subjected to a serious, very serious exam, let's say, yeah? Question, the Syrian question. And nobody is doing great. everybody is bargaining about Syrians as if they were sheep. No? Thank you very much.
So before opening the floor, perhaps just going back to your book and the title that is not exactly the title that you wanted, but à quoi bon la révolution si je ne peux danser. Finally, is there any message that you wanted to send through your book, or did you want to us as reader? What did you want to convey to us as reader in this particular book?
It is very easy to talk about Turkish politics because I almost memorized things that I have been talking about. And then politics and reality, actually, is very easy to talk about. When you asked about, when I am asked about, the novel, I go like almost paralyzed because, that's another mode of reality. That's another mode of being. And I cannot appear in both ways at the same. It's kind of schizophrenic, actually. But I was a woman in Tunisia on my own. I had this bloody boyfriend who left me in the middle of the curfew. Seriously, that was horrible. And I was fired from my job. I'm not trying to sound like drama queen, but it was a hard situation. And the people around me, they surrounded Carthage, torches in their hand. They're trying to burn down the whole district. And then meanwhile on Twitter or social media, thousands of people are hating me, calling me names, and then opening porno accounts on my name. I don't know how many. Trolls, on AKP payroll. And by the way, you really think that the entire country hates you. And it's a horrible feeling. It's worse than anything. And then this book, put me back on my feet. That's why I really think that it has some sort of magic in it. Everyone who read the book, it has been read more than 150,000 people in Turkey and in Germany. I don't know how many in other countries as well. And each time this book is published, I think that magic is spreading to that country. I'm not mystifying it. There's a big, energy of survival. I think that somehow goes through the story to the reader. That's why I love this book, and I really think that this one is very special. And though the characters, all of them are real people, except for Madame Lella, and except me. No, seriously, I'm not this person, but some of the things are real in the book. And I didn't only want to, survive with the book, but also I wanted to represent these, I want to talk about these Arab women, if possible, not in the Orientalist way. Because what moved me most throughout the Arab Spring or throughout Gezi uprising were the women. For some reason, no offense again, but for men, revolutions are processes to find another status quo. But whereas, for women, revolution don't end. It doesn't finish. They're never, comfortable under their skin, maybe. I don't know. But it's an ongoing, endless, and consistent process for women, the revolution. Because I think it's because they never find a status quo that they will be comfortable with. So I just wanted to talk about that through Amira and through Mariam, two characters. And last but not the least, Madame Lila is, I think, a woman, a mother that women like me are looking for. Cruel, but just. And, the very end, the last sentence of the book, actually, is something like, and I'm sorry to say this, but I'm going to say it, and it doesn't, it won't ruin anything, it's just, tells the essence of the book. I think the last sentence is, how should I translate it? It's okay if we had a courageous mother. If we had a courageous mother, it would be okay if the God didn't like us. So Madame Nila is the courageous mother. So yeah, this is it.
Great. I really look forward to read the book. So with this, I'm going to open the floor to the public.
That was tiring, huh?
Yes. You said at the beginning that global attention kind of zeroes in only when the country in question goes mad. But we have 10 years of a process of going mad. And like everybody is young. Erdogan is terrible, the dictatorship and everything. But 10 years ago you were a journalist in Turkey. What did you write about Erdogan and political Islam?
This is a story that I'm proud of, so I'm telling
Great. So tell us.
you. To start with, I was one of the first ones who saw the victory coming of these people. Nobody believed in the victory when they first entered the elections. I was one of the first people who said, like, these guys are coming and they're going to be here for a long while. Because they're coming from Anatolia, nouveau riche of Anatolia, blah blah, etc. It's a long story. And I was always critical. And what I've been attacked by the government or supporters of the government a lot. But the worst night was their second term, the start of their second term in 2007. There was a night, election victory night, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan was in the famous balcony, giving his balcony speech, saying that he said this: those people who didn't vote for us are also the colors of this country. So I thought, what are we? Are like garniture now, dressing with the main course? What are we? So I wrote this article, and during that time, it was very fashionable among Turkish intellectual circles to support AKP and so-called democratization process. So I have been critical all along, and yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you. No, you know what? I'm like, did you see this film, Trumbo? It's a new film, Hollywood production. It's very interesting. It's about McCarthy era, and there's this blacklist in Hollywood, and Trumbo is a scriptwriter who is on the blacklist. And then he struggles, things happen, and finally, that period of time, the blacklist, the anti-communist, stuff ends. And then, during a ceremony, I don't know, award ceremony or something, he gives a speech. And that was an awesome speech. And the movie is not great, but that speech is... And he says something like, this was an extraordinary period. And nobody has the right to blame the other, or nobody is better than the other. I think we're going to be talking about, I would very much love to do the same speech. It's not like, I'm so proud. It was a joke, I'm not proud at all. And, when people are trying with fear, you cannot really depend on the results, because not everybody is strong. And who are we to, blame those people who are not strong enough? Or who are we to, why do we admire those people who are more strong than us? That's not a fair, just evaluation, I think. So this is an extraordinary time that we're going through, we have been going through, and it's not going to end in the near future, I think so. And that kind of attitude towards each other, especially among the opposition, it compartmentalizes the reactions towards the political power. It makes you alone. It gives you only solitude, anger, and so on and so forth. And none of these feelings are healthy, I think, and they're not deserved by any human being. So yeah, it's an extraordinary time. Everybody does what they can.
Monsieur?
D'abord, bienvenue, Ece Temelkuran, c'est femme. Elle a parlé de face de la Turquie. Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec tout ce qu'elle a dit. Mais quand même, il y a une autre face de la Turquie. C'est le problème de peuple kurde. Alors, depuis 3 mois, il y avait des soulèvements dans ce grand ville. Il y avait des centaines de morts. Et la Turquie l'a bombardé avec les avions, avec les hélicoptères, avec les chars, en Turquie, dans les villes de Kurdistan. C'était un grand massacre. Et il y avait, dans chaque ville, dans 3-4 villes, il y avait des quartiers qui sont complètement détruits. Et ça, c'est un problème c'est aussi une réalité des intellectuels turcs. Même c'est un problème des milieux opposants. Alors, on critique, ok, mais depuis un siècle, avec la création de la Turquie, il y a un peuple, environ 20 millions, seulement en Turquie, même sa langue maternelle est interdite. Les écoles sont interdites. Même leur existence est interdite. Et depuis 30 ans, il y a une résistance pour exister, pour avoir un statut dans leur région. C'est un peuple des plus anciens de la région, descendants des Grecs, etc. Voilà. Et ça, les problèmes en Turquie, l'autre face, c'est-à-dire le problème de démocratie, le problème de système. Pourquoi un parti politique islamiste peut devenir au pouvoir? Ça, c'est une grande question. Et ouvertement, ils ont mené une politique un peu djihadiste, mais entre guillemets moderne. Alors, comment ça se fait en Turquie, république, membre de l'OTAN, qui a accepté plusieurs critères de l'Occident, comment ça se fait qu'il arrive à faire des grands massacres? En 3 mois, il peut massacrer 400 personnes, les femmes, les enfants, etc. Alors, et il y a aussi une autre grande question.
Thank you.
Mais je suis tout à fait d'accord tout ce qu'elle a dit. J'ai voulu attirer l'attention sur la face, l'autre face de la réalité de la vie.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. I've been writing about Kurdish issues, I don't know, since I'm 20, I think. Doing reportage, writing books, writing columns and so on. This is a matter which is very close to my heart. And it's not easy to talk about it without getting emotional. Seriously, incredibly horrible things are happening right now in the Kurdish district. But then, to talk about, well, how should I put it? Seriously, this is very difficult for me to talk about. Kurdish issue was once a human rights issue for Europeans and for Turkish leftists, for the Turkish opposition. But then now, throughout the last decade, for several reasons, I won't go into that, it has become just another issue of the Middle East. It is no more a human rights issue, a democratization issue. It has become, unfortunately, one of the things in Middle East, one of the factors of Syrian crisis, whatever, which makes it very hard for the opposition to talk about it. And I am not really going into how it happened, how Kurdish politics played in this, his part in this, how AKP cheated people, and you know, all those details aside, I think the tragedy is now being dismissed by Europe as millions of refugees are dismissed. So this is a human crisis of the region, and I think a Kurdish issue should be once again taken into hand as a human rights issue and a democratization issue. Not, you know, a group of people who determines the equilibrium, the balance in the Middle East. If you make it like that, it is becoming something that the Turkish opposition, nor the European, you know, left or progressive people can talk about. It is very hard to talk about Kurdish issue just because of that. And if it's possible, all of us should push this issue as a human rights issue. But now, since the area is, you know, under military siege, it is not easy to get in for the journalists either. So we cannot really have information, and the existing information is already striking. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question? Yes.
Bah, je veux poser des questions, mais le problème c'est que je parle pas bien français, anglais non plus. Si je parle en turc, est-ce que ça vous dérange ou...
Che idioma parla? Spagnolo?
Pas en turc, je peux traduire en français. Ah ouais. Merhaba.
But no, then nobody will translate. Okay, sorry.
Je suis désolé. Hein.
That's right.
Sanırım 2008'de 12 Eylül dönemiyle ilgili bir yazınızı okumuştum. O dönemde de aslında cezaevindeydim. Ve onun hemen akabindeki yazılarınızda inanmanın matematiğinden bahsediyordunuz. Birkaç röportajınızdan da bunları okudum. Nedir aslında bu inanmanın matematiği? Çünkü hani o dönem beni etkilemişti. Dört duvar arasında inancınızın sorgulanmasından kaynaklanan bir yerde
Je peux résumer, mais
okay,
oui, il parle d'un article
Vous lui donnez un micro pour que je l'entende? Alors, parce que... Désolée,
il parle d'un article d'Ece Temelkuran dans lequel il a lu Ece Temelkuran parlait d'une sorte de mathématicité de la croyance. Il aimerait savoir plus sur ça, sur ce plan.
Yani bir inanmanın matematiği nedir? İkincisi ülke olarak bir ülke bu matematik dersinden kalırsa, bu inanmanın matematiğinden kalırsa ne olur?
Qu'est-ce que c'est que cette croyance de mathématicité? Et puis si un pays échoue dans ce cours de mathématiques, qu'est-ce qui peut arriver?
Once I was a journalist writing about mathematics or faith or something, you know, those were the days. I guess the question is asked for the second part rather than the first part, so I'm going to answer the second part. What if the country fails about faith in humanity, as I take it? We are seriously going some extraordinary time. You know, there's this popular joke in Turkey for the last years. You know, people asking each other, are we going some sort of, you know, are we the guinea pigs It was some sort of big-scale experiment run by Elle or something. We have been the guinea pigs of a big-scale experiment called Turkish model. And this model has been tried in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and in Turkey. And it was tried to be applied to, they tried to apply it in Arab countries as well, but it didn't work. So this was an experiment, and we were the guinea pigs. And this is horrible to say, and this is we are part of a failed experiment. Well, so this is disturbing, and this is not only disturbing for the existing social situation, but also it is quite desperate for the coming generation as well. So yeah, and faith is very much in question here, especially for me, because when, as I said earlier, when organized ignorance takes over, I guess there's nothing to do for those of us who cannot be in the same line with this organized ignorance. It is brutality, it is oppression, it is ignorance that really shakes my faith as well. Not only in myself, by the way, but also in humanity. I just detected in my head lately, and I've been talking about this for the last 2 weeks, I have this pathological feeling of guilt for last year. It is becoming really pathological because sometimes I feel guilty, not because I'm not in prison, because I am living, I'm not dead. And I was talking to my friends, and they said the same thing, we have the same thing, feeling guilty. It's because we're not doing enough, one reason, and it is because this experiment was inhumane. Inhumane. So, yeah, I am really, questioning my faith in humanity as well. So, this is the good part of being a literature person. You can say these things. Seriously, when you're a journalist, everybody expects to give hope, whatever, be political and or mobilize, whatever. But then, when you're doing literature, which is more humane, I think, you can say that, no, you know what, I am, they shook my faith in humanity. And that's why I think maybe I'm doing literature now, not journalism. When I was in Diyarbakir, when almost the capital of Kurdish region, cultural capital at least, I was there for a book fair, and I remember almost 1,000 people came to listen to me. I was 35, and I was so afraid of the love and the faith in me, because this is something that you have to shoulder, you have to carry with you. And I'm not that strong to start with, and secondly, nobody can be that strong. I think, my shake in myself and in humanity has been shaken, and most probably those people who expect me to be a journalist, a political activist, whatever, they have, their faith in me might be shaken as well. But writing literature has another good sign. You can disappoint people, and I think now I'm 42, and I'm using the luxury of disappointing those people who expect me to be politicized constantly, every day, throughout the years. Was it a too long answer?
Toute dernière question peut-être? Last question?
Yeah.
There's another young woman, maybe after that.
Okay. Yeah, so you were saying that you were able 10 years ago to a little bit identify what was coming up and the situation that we're in now. So I was wondering if maybe you foresee something for the future of Turkey, the politics, the Kurdish issue. What if you have a little idea of where this is going? And yeah, that's just about the future.
In this book that I mentioned earlier, Melancholy and Insanity, Insane and Melancholy, this is the story of Turkey, and it's a political book, and it's published in German. It's going to be published in English, in French, it's not going to be published in Turkish. At the very end of the book, there is this so-called projection of the future. It doesn't work for Turkey because you never know what happens in Turkey. But then, you know, it's in between projection. Yeah, it's observation and a little bit. I do think that, and I wrote that in that book, in the last chapter, that this is going to be the decade of Kurds.
Of what?
Kurds. The last, coming 10 years will be the 10 years of Kurds. They will come up culturally, politically, and so on and so forth. But then, you never know. But I think Kurdish people have become mature, and they experimented enough. They've resisted, and so on and so forth. So they are, I think, ready to appear in the scene of history as they have never done before. But right now, it is horrible, of course. Not only Kurds in Turkey, but also the Kurds in Syria, in Iraq. It's horrible for all of them. What was the question? Yeah, the projection. Yeah, I think this is enough. Yeah. The other part of the answer is not, very relieving, very happy. Done?
So I'm just going to, I kept in my mind two things that you said about this book. That first was the book of a survivor, and second that I quote you, for women, revolutions don't end or never end. So, well, thank you very much, and I'm sure that you've passed on some of your strength and courage into this book, so you can lay down a bit and relax a bit now. And so it was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, and with this, I guess that we can finish the